Okay, yeah, I have toured that one. So if you have any
What,
questions.
is this property already deeded to you, Jack? Or is this deeded to you? So in other words, if they don't approve this, then it all goes flat, huh? I assume they're gonna approve it, but you don't have any deeded property.
Do I
So-
own any needed property?
Do you own any of the property that you're putting this mine on?
As of today, no, I do not.
You don't? Okay.
Yeah.
So if they don't approve it, then you don't buy it, huh?
I can't.
Are you buying it, or are you buying it yourself?
Yeah.
Dave,
Okay.
Dave,
Are you
All the
reselling it?
contracts.
Hold it,
All
hold
the
it, hold it.
contracts.
That's not really part of the reclamation.
Yeah, it's
of the
reclamation.
operation.
That's the land that's involved there.
It's not, it's not.
It's the land that's involved.
Yes, it is. But their private dealings on how they
Oh,
acquire that.
well,
is not-
well, okay.
That's whether
But if you
buy
don't,
somebody
if you,
else's-
I assume you're gonna approve it, 'cause you don't dare say no.
You have to look at.
You don't dare say no.
Look at the requirements of NR 135 of the
Yeah.
county ordinance. Sheila?
What's going to happen after it is reclaimed? Who's going to own it? After it's reclaimed? Are you going to still own it?
Part
Or
of
the
it-
sand mine company?
Part of it.
And who's the other part?
Well, I've got agreements with different people that currently own the property that may have, a variety of different terms to them. Those terms are private between the landowner and myself.
Is there any other questions related to reclamation, things that you've heard? Brad?
Well, I just have a couple of questions on the trucking. How many trucks a day, ballpark, do you have a feel for that? The semis, I'm assuming,
I think we're generally in that 160,
trucks per day, 24/7,
I don't think that's been.
8 months a year?
I think that's all factored
That's okay to
in.
ask
Those
them
those
that.
road
but there
agreements that
again,
are coming up.
I don't have, this
Well-
information for you, I can't regulate that. I hope people realize that when you're
Yeah.
asking a question. The reclamation plan will not regulate the trucking, and
No.
as they mentioned, that goes to the town of Kern.
Town of
as well.
Kern, lots
I
of
think- I
questions.
think you realize that.
I do realize that. I just thought that it was designed 90% of the way. I figured you probably knew how many trucks would go through, so, and you answered my question.
Sheila?
Well, I don't understand. Well, he can talk about mining operations, but then Dave couldn't ask a question.
He did ask a question, and I believe he got an answer, as well as you just asked a question.
Well, yeah.
Where, I guess I missed it, maybe you told us where you were putting the first burden, overburden. Removing the burden and where you were putting it.
Yeah, we've got a couple of, there's gonna be a couple of short-term stockpiles that are gonna be near the plant site until we can get enough sand out to begin the reclaim.
Initially, when we build the plant area, we are gonna have a berm along the east side that we'll use, that's mostly gonna be the topsoil B horizon. Down in this area is probably gonna be the stockpile area for the overburden. So again, those will serve as screening berms and also will allow us onto the overburden that's the topsoil B horizon to be stored.
Thank you.
Brad?
One more.
Sure.
Now, you've got a lot of little green, looks like plot sites, house sites there, it looks like. I think you said maybe like 1.5 to 2 years per lot, if you will, of mining, right? Per phase. So it looks like maybe there's 20, 30 of them there. So we're talking 40, 50 years of stuff going on.
Yeah, maybe 25 years or so.
It's hard to determine, you think sales are gonna go one way.
Oh, yeah.
You're not sure how it's gonna go,
Okay.
and that impacts how fast it's leaking.
Sure.
But you're right about the cells, sizes,
Yeah.
so we'll go through each one of those.
And some of them, obviously, you're not gonna be able to do one and reclaim it right away. It'll be 10, 20 years before perhaps you start reclaiming some of those.
Oh, no, we'll be reclaiming much
Before
better
that?
than
Okay.
Yeah, it would get really expensive if we don't.
Yeah, so what do you do when you reclaim it? Do it just lays there for a while, or is somebody gonna start farming it right away?
When there's enough room to. So it takes a little, once you get it back to a point where it's usable,
Mm-hmm.
as soon as that is, as soon as there's enough room for them to do it, we would expect them to.
So it could be many, many years before that happens.
I don't think so. I think that you're maybe a year behind that, right? Like, so let's say we go back into an area, let's say we mine for 3 years,
Right.
take a best guess.
Sure.
And now we start to reclaim. So we go back in and we put in 20 acres of reclaim. And this year, so maybe next spring we can get farmed. You might just lose one season depending on the time.
Mm-hmm.
But you could, I mean, what's feasible for the minimum amount of acres that a farmer can win that for?
Yeah.
As soon as you get to that point, and we'd like to get some, root structure in that reclaim as soon as possible, and try to reduce the erosion.
I remember
The sooner we get it farming, the better off we are.
one more thing on a reclamation plan. I looked at another reclamation plan a year ago or so on a Hixton, whatever, and it looked like the finished floor. Now, you guys didn't do that reclamation plan, so don't worry about it, but there was another firm. But their finish elevation was like 10 feet lower than probably the Trempealeau River runs, okay? So it was probably gonna be a marsh. So anyway, and your elevations were helpful, your sections were helpful.
Sheila?
Oh, I have a question, not a complaint. I don't understand the financial assurance, because I think when I looked at the plan, it was 49 million something, is that right, for the,
That's what.
Reclamation?
If they had everything opened up at the same time,
okay,
the calculations could be that high.
Okay.
Typically, they would never do that.
so they just put so much in based on how much land they are going to reclaim? Is that,
It's how much area is disturbed,
yeah,
and it depends on how much area that is to start that. If it's, say it's $100,000 per acre, you multiply that times the number of acres, and then we're asked to project out
yeah.
a couple of years, because I don't want that financial assurance just be for today. I gotta make sure it's for phase 3 or 4, so they have to give me some input, and if I think that that's not applicable, or if we revisit this, say the cost goes up in 2 or 3, 4 years based on fuel prices and other things. Just because it says in 2014 it's X amount, that doesn't mean it's gonna stay at that amount. We have that ability at the county level to increase that amount to make sure that we're covered.
So what if they start on covering land and then they decide to stop and just walk away from it? Is the county stuck on it?
I call in that because the notice on the financial assurance, there's a period of time that the company, the bondholder, irrevocable letter of credit holder, they have to give me notice that they're canceling that financial assurance. I have to make sure that I have enough notification before that expires that I can grab that. And not wait to see if they're selling it, not wait to see if they're not gonna be around. So that's a very important part of the regulatory authority's duties, is to make sure that we have those, and normally court counsel reviews those to make sure the proper language is there, so we don't get stuck holding. It's basically a contract. If a contract that you have expires, you don't know what's gonna happen. Maybe the people say, yeah, we'll just renew it and we'll keep going, but if it's over, and you don't necessarily have the conditions attached to that contract, whether it's rental, whether it's whatever else, legal dealings that you have. So a financial assurance is basically a contract that we have. We want to make sure that it's renewed. Some of them will have an automatic annual renewal, and it'll have a phase of time that if they're not going to renew it, I would get a notification from the bond company.
Every one of them phases pretty much, if they go into different phases, is that what they base their payment on?
It could.
So many acres or
Yeah.
phases?
So-
It's acres.
So, for example, if you have 3 or 4 of these phases as well as this site, that would be what I would expect that irrevocable letter of credit or financial assurance to have, and we'll have that calculated on how much. Also, the facilities, there should be a calculation on how much money it would take. the county had to hire somebody to come in and take those buildings down.
Okay.
So there's a structural calculation as well as how much the landscaping part of it is
So you
used.
get your, take it, when they go, say they do their 20 acres, and before they start blasting the next 20 acres, you could go payment before they can start.
Well, it's not a payment, it's a bond.
Bond.
Yeah, it's a bond. They would have to make sure that it's increased. I would have to make sure that either they reclaimed enough, and I'd say, okay, these 20 acres are done, and
So
we'll
that's pretty much your job,
transfer
is
them.
Make sure that they don't get ahead of you on the bond.
Yes, that is correct.
Sleep well at night.
Go ahead, sure.
Is it done? This plan that you have up there, is that as large as is going to be? Or are you going to be making it larger?
Did you hear that? She's asking if that's as big as the site's gonna be, or if you're planning on potentially making it larger.
Well, for the contracts that we have right now, that's the design of the plan. In the event that we ever acquire more land, then we would have to come back and readjust our reclamation plan.
Yeah, if they expand the footprint, say they wanna buy another 80 acres or another 120, it would come back through this process again for the reclamation part. They would have, if there's any of the other things that are part of the plan, they would have to re-identify wetlands, any of those other issues that are already part of it.
Sorry if this is a dumb question, but you're telling us a lot of details and it's great. And then I kind of can't remember if you said that those are specified in a document, like the county says, if there's going to be soil put back, it's this much topsoil of this thickness, or, is it hammered out on a piece of paper, or?
It's part of the reclamation plan.
Okay.
It describes how they're going to bring back the overburden, the non-mineable material, and
Okay.
what they're going to be putting back over the top of that. That's part of their plan.
Is it hammered out and done, or, or is it still kind of being negotiated, or does it say, like, right now, 12 inches of topsoil, for example, or? That's,
It depends a little bit on each site, because depending upon what they have available, maybe some of.
this is the constantly shifting, okay,
Well, it depends upon how much soil is available.
got it.
They may not be able to put 12 inches of topsoil on, because maybe in those forested landscapes, there's only 6 or 8. So there's,
Reclaimed to the former condition it was in, so,
it not necessarily former
Oh.
condition. If they're wanting to have agricultural land, it could be pasture. And so the idea is to use that topsoil to cover it back, to fertilize it. Again, it's their property, but they have said it's gonna be in some form of agriculture production. It could be pasture land, it could be
Okay.
croppable, tillable land, it could be forestry. So those are the things.
that's all
that-
very open-ended.
It is, but agricultural land is a lot of different things. to a
What
lot
I'm,
of different
what I'm trying to get at is, like, if the county has a legal definition of the reclamation so that it can stand on it and say, if it's not to the county's satisfaction, they say, hey, we have something to stand on, we wanted 6 inches of topsoil here, for example.
They have
That's what I'm getting at.
in the plan, there's a standard that they are supposed to meet as far as how much of it's covered. So is it 80% green? Those are the type of things that are in the plan.
Okay, so not as specific as 6 inches of topsoil.
Not necessarily.
Okay, thank you.
So they don't necessarily put on what they think, they got something that they have to go by.
Well, like I said, it's in the plan, and they'll work with what they have available.
I realize you can't put topsoil on something that puts 6 inches off, it's not gonna happen, but for farmland, what do you need? I've got pretty much firsthand of what claiming farmland on 2 acres. And either they didn't go into, that's what I guess I wondered, is there is a state limit, or there is a?
No, I don't have a hard set rule that says it has to be 10 inches.
Did you make up that then? Is that what you, who sets the idea of if you can have 3 inches or 10 inches?
That's part of what's in the plan. They propose what's in the plan to me.
They propose it, you
So
say whether you
that
agree
seems
to it.
reasonable, yes or no.
So basically, it's you that kind of determines what you want, more or less.
Well, we take a look at it, yes.
I know this all sounds fine and dandy. I know that you're hired to actually represent the company during this presentation of plans. What happens in 5 years, what happens in 10 years, actually essentially will come back to you. You probably won't be around in 10 years.
Sure, hope.
Well, I'm just saying, you think about retirement, you probably won't be in that role playing with Jack.
Yeah, right, I got it.
So,
I got
things
between
change.
75 and
Things-
100 employees, so when I retire, my company's not going away. Like I said, it was running before I showed up, and it'll be running after I go.
Well,
But hopefully Jack doesn't fire me, but the,
25 years is a long time.
yeah, and this industry is very heavily regulated, and that's one of the things that we're doing here today, is we're trying to get the feedback to finalize this plan. So we go through and we make all our assumptions, we use the science, and we figure out what we have available to us, we come up with a plan, we listen to the folks, and then if needed, we adjust the plan, and then we go on from there.
There's a lot of different regulations, but just like your air quality, if they do a stat test or whatever comes up and you find that you don't have the levels to basically require additional filtering, you aren't required to have a permit for it either, and that just goes away. So that air quality isn't measured, it's up to the individual company to come back and do an annual measurement.
Once we build that plant, that's the permit. That's what's permit. So once I build that, we're gonna have, so we got a submission in to take care of those things just like this. And once that's permitted, that's what has to be, the plant has to be the way we said it's gonna be. You know, and if it's not, then you can't run it without the control.
Sheila,
It's very heavily regulated.
go ahead, Sheila.
Kern is on zone, and I don't think they have a non-metallic mining ordinance. Is that right?
I'm not familiar with
I don't believe so.
Okay,
but
so,
that's-
okay. So then who determines what hours you can run and, you know, the blasting, if you have to notify people? Who determines all those kind of,
most of that is really worked out in that community council I talked about earlier. You know, we try to put that committee together, and we work together and see where the impacts are, and we kind of adjust from there.
And blasting, that is regulated by the state of Wisconsin. Isn't there notices that you have to give to landowners prior to doing so? Is that- Go ahead.
In regard to the blasting, I'm just curious, does it have to be in relation to whether you are within the 300 feet of the land, or could you be like, oh, I don't know, a half a mile from there overlooking it? Would we then not be notified, or does it have to be within that 300 feet?
I don't know what the blasting criteria are for the state of Wisconsin.
Because you just commented that the local landowners would be notified, and I'm just curious.
Generally what we do, we don't want to exclude anybody who's got a concern, right? So generally what I like to do in a blasting scenario, on any of these, whether it's a limestone mine or a sand mine or whatever, is I like to figure out how many structures I have, and then I'll put a measuring device in between us and we'll put a seismograph out there. We'll do some real small test shots, kind of get a feel for where we're at. And generally about 2,500 feet, we'd like to, as a starting point, talk to each one of those folks. And in that community council, a lot of times we offer to do like a pre-exam your structures and that kind of thing, so you kind of got a base case, and then we go on from there.
That was my next question. Am I guaranteed that that's not going to, damage my basement walls because I'm, well, if you say 2,500 feet, if I'm 2,502 feet away, then too bad for me?
No, that's
or-
what I'm saying. If you were 3,000 feet, 3,500 feet, as long as we're not, it's getting ridiculous.
Right.
But basically, this is a pretty good solid science, this blasting, and we've gotten better and better at it over the years, and the technology's improved, so we've got better tools to work with. So we hire licensed blasters. We make sure that we know what the blasting plan is, and again, we're regulated by MSHA also, and the state. So basically what we want to do is anybody who's, within a realistic distance, we want to work with those folks. We can do a pre-survey of any structures that they have. But well inside of all of that, on our property, we're going to have seismographs, just kind of like that monitoring well situation, in between, us and you. we want to have a measuring device that's generally hired out, to a third-party company that'll come in and set that up and bring in those, bring in those readings. And then when we have a shot, we go and analyze the results, we analyze those readings, and then we adjust those shots to try to, again, keep reducing that impact that we have on that's how we handle
Dave?
Who is our contact if we have unreasonable sediment, unreasonable erosion from this? Who do we talk to? Who do we contact in
it. I
regards
couldn't
to
hear the
this?
first part of your question.
Well, if we have unreasonable sediment coming from the mine, I live below it, and there's a lot of water comes from there, and I'm sure there's gonna be some sand water, and I got 10 inches or 12 inches of topsoil. I don't want 10 or 12 inches of sand over the top of that.
Oh, yeah.
And
No,
who do I contact?
It would be partly my responsibility along with the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources. They have a stormwater discharge permit. That person is Brad Johnson, he's in Wausau, Wisconsin. So if you have a question or concern, your first point of contact could be me and/or Brad at the same time. He covers multiple counties, I cover Jackson County. So if he's not available to come down, then I would take a look at it as fast as I can, relay that information to him. If it's something that needs a immediate fix, I would be in contact with Brad and the company to make sure things are done now, not wait for a week or two until somebody else can come down and take a look at it.
And you can call me.
But ultimately, and that's good, if you have that agreement that you can call up the company and they're gonna deal with it. But if you have concerns or questions, you should at least let me know as well, so I can document them, I can keep track as well. Not that I don't trust them to let me know about it, but you need to let me know.
And that's for anything. If you got any issue with the mine at all, I'd really like you to, contact us. The best operations out there are a collaborative effort between the mining operator, which is me, and the community. That's the best operations. And I can tell you from experience that being proactive and seeking that input and working together gets you a way better operation than, operating in a vacuum.
Is there anybody? Go ahead.
Do you have any history or track record of litigation as a result of failed reclamation efforts, class action suits? What's the background on that? Not that you're aware of.
Anybody else have a question?
Oh, I don't know, and I apologize if you said it. What's your background? You don't have a background in this kind of activity and you're getting a contractor, but do you have other large projects that you have done that you could mention? That,
Not in the mining area, no.
I mean, but in other fields, little construction projects or?
Yeah, I've been in real estate development, I've been in public accounting, I've been in investment banking.
And you're from Wisconsin or where
I
are you?
live in Green Bay.
Green Bay. Okay.
Anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, I guess I'll just, a little bit on, we start, the track and wall, the foundation start.
Well, like I said, we do all these things to prevent and mitigate those issues.
But what happens if you do, what happens if my water goes running one day and you gotta come and build me a well?
Like I said, it's a very heavily regulated industry. State has requirements. If I damage property, I gotta fix it.
You gotta fix it. To what extent? I mean, you just gotta build me a new well. If it's black water that comes out of there, that's not your problem.
No,
That's
not
not
at all. No, you gotta get you right back to the same level of quality we're at.
Not a lot of good water up Kern Valley, and I got one.
Okay, Sheila?
Like I said, we're gonna be mining above that water tank. There shouldn't have any impact on your well whatsoever.
What we suggest for people to do is to get like a baseline to test your water before they come in and to check your foundation and everything to make sure it's okay, because if something happens, you're gonna have to prove to them that they've done it.
Okay, I think it's good practice that you mentioned there, and we can do that. So anybody who's local, we can go ahead and hire a third party to come in and do those inspections of both the well and the structure. We're more than happy to do that.
You pay for it.
That's right.
So if we want our own inspector, you still pay for it?
As long as it's within a reasonable.
Well, yeah.
Okay, good, we're gonna get pretty close to wrapping this up. Marie, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, I just wonder, what is the contingency for, it's my understanding that these financial assurance bonds have, typically have a 90-day cancellation clause in them. And that if there's some change in ownership of a mine, that, and if they work it just right, that they can be out and gone, and that 90-day opportunity to get rebonding can be lost. So then it could leave the taxpayers with that responsibility. Is there any contingency to make sure that that doesn't happen?
Well, my understanding of the financial assurance, in particular bond, that company that holds a bond still has to let me know that they're gonna discontinue that. It's not the company that holds it, it's a financial institution. So even if they disappear and the company's gonna cancel it, my understanding is that financial assurance, that company that holds that, they have to let me know that they're canceling it. So there shouldn't be the bond disappearing even though they're gone. The language is
90 days
written.
is a pretty short time to reestablish bond. It would seem to me.
Well, and that's what I'm saying.
If you find out only,
Well, the next thing is, Marie, I have to grab that bond. I have to call in their marker on that financial assurance. If I don't know if they're gonna be, if the next company's gonna reestablish it, you grab the money and hang on to it. And then find out if somebody else is gonna grab the mine, or if they're gonna be gone or whatever. So the county has that, whatever, the thousands or millions of dollars, you have that to see what happens. And so if you have to go in and take over that site and reclaim it, you have the money, it's there, it's available. Okay?
In other words, something like that did happen, a lot of people pissed off at you, because that's your job, right?
Yes. Okay, I think we've got through pretty much all the questions or comments. Now, if there's anybody that wants to come forward, anybody that's here at all today, if you want to come forward and present public testimony, you're welcome to do so. If you have copies of that information that you want to not only give it orally or present it to me in written form, you're welcome to do so. Sheila?
I think because of the way you worded the public notice, that people could only speak, the ones that lived within 300 feet of the boundary line, that's in violation of the, of your Jackson County ordinance and the state ordinance, where everyone, it's not just only the people who live within 300 feet, but everyone in that area is affected.
Everybody that's been here today has had the opportunity to talk, and I'm offering everybody the opportunity to come forward and present public testimony.
But you limited the people. I know a lot of people didn't come because they couldn't speak.
I had one individual call and ask that question of me.
Yes, but most people don't, you know, they don't do that. They're afraid of authority and they just don't do it.
All I can say is that people that called, and if they asked that question, they were offered the opportunity to come here, and there was no limitations put on how far away they lived or didn't live from the site.
Still violating the ordinance. Sorry.
Does anybody would like to come forward and present testimony? If not, the meeting is concluded. Thank you.
I was impressed with it. I was impressed with the cleanliness of the place. There was very little dust in the area.
I think
It was all enclosed.
to me,